So today I wanted to go over a game I played yesterday to illustrate the kinds of skills and knowledge that games can teach that are comparable to the kinds of skills and knowledge that schools need to teach. And often we think of skills like analytical thinking, skills that would be considered important in subjects like math and science, obviously also the humanities, but traditionally we think of the STEM subjects, to be very difficult to teach. Yet these kinds of skills are critical to performing well in video games, especially competitive video games. The game I will be loading up will highlight the very quick analytical thinking I and many other StarCraft 2 players step through while playing. So I'm going to load the game here. And from the loading screen, which is the same loading screen that you see when you're playing on ladder, I notice that he's Zerg, which puts me in a particular mindset. Zerg is known for its potential for fast attacks early and good defense late. And so I'm most worried about my opponent attacking me quickly, since I tend to be a pretty defensive player. So if he's playing defensive, he's kind of playing the same way that I like to play. I'm willing to kind of engage in that kind of gameplay. I'm less willing to engage in more aggressive gameplay. So because of this, I send my overlord over. So already there's kind of like this individualization going on. I want to play the game a certain way, so I adjust the way that I do things to make sure that that happens. You know, just like in the academic subjects, certain people enjoy certain aspects of the subject better than other aspects, so they tend to focus on that aspect more. Just like in video games, if you prefer a particular strategy, you can learn the game in such a way to encourage and benefit yourself from playing that particular strategy. So I'm going to fast forward the game a bit because I'm basically just waiting on my overlord to get over there. So we're going to follow them. They're very slow. So when I get over there, I notice two very important things. I'm going to pause right here. I lost my overlord. So I noticed two very important things. One, he spent minerals and workers building these two evolution chambers. Evolution chambers cost 75 minerals, and each building that you build as Zerg costs a worker. So he spent 150 minerals building these two and 2 workers. So that's a total of 250 minerals, essentially, that he spent building all this. So essentially he has 5 fewer workers than I have, which is a significant amount of income that he doesn't have. Workers generally gather 60 minerals per minute, and so he's down a full base 300 minerals per minute. I could build an extra base per minute than him, which is significant, especially when we're only 3 minutes into the game. I also noticed that he doesn't have a second base. However, that information is inaccurate because he actually does have a base in a non-traditional spot over here. I tend not to worry about non-traditional bases as they tend to be hard to defend and fill. If he's doing this, then he could have been doing something better. He could have put it in a better spot. He could have been doing something else entirely. So I tend not to worry about it. But in these about 30 seconds, I learned 3 important things that are a consequence of what I saw. One, he has to have fewer workers than me, because he spent his workers and minerals on things that weren't workers. 2, he might attack me, since that's the only rational reason that he'd purposely put himself down on workers. Normally, if you see these kinds of things, they're like, oh, that's a little weird. The only rational response is to assume that he's going to attack you. And 3, I need to make a defense. Because of these things, because I've put myself down this logical chain of thought, he has fewer workers than me. The only reason he would do that is he wants to attack me. If he wants to attack me, I need to defend it. I need to build Zerglings. That's the conclusion that I come to. And in fact, you'll see soon after, I built a bunch of Zerglings. These little guys are Zerglings. So this protects me against basically the only possible response that he could have. I also make a lot of queens, but that's less important. So I make Zerglings to defend, and I eventually build my own evolution chambers to undermine the possibility of him having more units. So we'll get to that point in the game here pretty soon. So I fill up my base and then I build 2 evolution chambers here. So again, this undermines the possibility of him having more units than me, because I feel pretty confident in my ability to defend over here because there's a natural choke and ramp that makes it difficult for him to attack me. So the only other real possibility is he attacks me here, which has a short choke point, but is easy for him to bust through without me seeing it immediately. So I make a longer, narrower choke point, and that helps me defend if I have fewer units. And again, the reason that I wanted to bring this game as an example is I often hear other teachers and coworkers complaining about students' lack of analytical and critical thinking, yet as a somewhat below average player, these things play out like this for me constantly, and it plays out for other players as well like that all the time. In fact, there are entire communities in StarCraft 2 that have been built up around learning this game for decades, and StarCraft personalities have started their careers teaching large, dedicated StarCraft 2 communities how to play this game better. I don't think there's a better example than a guy named Sean Plott, who often goes by the gamertag Day9. He started his career back in like 2009 just teaching this game. Thousands of people would tune in every week to watch his show called the Day9 Daily to learn about this game and study this game and learn about all the responses and knowledge and little quirks and whatnot, learning about all that can happen in a StarCraft 2 game, which is a lot. There's a lot of different things that can happen in any given StarCraft 2 game. And the thing is, the StarCraft 2 is not even that popular of a game right now. There are much more popular games like League of Legends, Dota, Counter-Strike, Fortnite, and many others that have even more dedicated communities that require an equally demanding amount of knowledge to play proficiently. These developers have obviously figured out something about engagement that is still difficult to find in traditional classrooms. So gamification concepts should be seen as a route toward making more engaged and sustained learning that would lead to better academic outcomes. These are not things that you traditionally see in subjects like math and science, where students will come in and say, hey, I watched a YouTube video and I learned something about chemistry. That's not something you hear very often except from your already invested, engaged students. But that is something you hear very often about these video games, where they learn things that are equally difficult to learn, but for some reason that is something they want to learn versus math and science, where it's viewed as boring, it's viewed as potentially even unimportant. So these are things that I think we should learn from. These are game design concepts that I think we should learn from to create truly engaging content that is probably, well, definitely more important for these students.